So, hey guys, since this is a pretty long video, I just wanted to clarify a few things up. We're gonna jump straight into Zbrush with sculpting, and there you're gonna learn a lot about sculpting and my workflow, how I do it. After that, we're gonna decimate the model, just plunge it into Blender. In Blender, we're gonna unwrap the model, and after unwrapping, we're gonna send that over to Substance Painter, where we will do a texture pass. I will explain everything in detail, everything in depth, why I do it. I will explain the principles behind it and what is my thought process about it. And after all that, we're just gonna import the whole thing into Unreal so we can see how everything looks and feels. So here we are in ZBrush. I have dragged out two very simple models that I have created in Blender. It's just a very simple pillars that I'm kind of aiming for the look of. And first things first, I like to set up a few things, especially the rotation. I like to rotate only on y-axis. It's kind of easier for me, especially when I'm using the tablet to orientate properly. And another thing, we'll just dynamesh these both right away. And since we already have defined the base shape, sort of, I don't actually want to have like a lower poly. I want to have around million polys each right off the bat. So I have a little bit of a custom setup, but I will show everything as where its place is. So you can go under geometry into the Dynamesh, and I'm gonna select groups. Actually, not groups. We don't need them because they're separate subtools. Um, I'm gonna go into geometry, and let's find what value is correct. So 500, none. Let's see, let's test out 500 first. Seems about right, but we need a bit more, so like 800 maybe. 800 is still a lot, but 1000, it's always kind of back and forth with these. Uh, hmm. I'm gonna do 140. Actually, I'm gonna do 1000. Yeah, and I'm gonna just divide it once, and that's it. That should be fine. It is 2 million. It's a bit over the top, but it is what it is. So what I'll first do is I don't like these kind of edges here. So what I like doing, also I'm gonna turn on solo so we only see the thing we're sculpting on. I like picking up H polish here and just slowly smoothing them out sort of with this brush. So we have a nice base and it's not in rectangles completely. You can add a little bit sometimes. Yep, just slowly smoothing it out. We'll work on the mesh quite a bit, so this is a pretty important step, but this is gonna smooth itself out by its own by the time we're done with it as well, so we should keep that in mind. So just a little bit. Yep, there it is. We can also smooth these parts, but these are the ones that we'll be working on mainly. Yep, let's just give them a little smooth and then we shall go over the basic stuff. Okay. After doing that, I like using either Trim Smooth Border or Trim Dynamic. Trim Dynamic is kind of more forgiving, so I usually use that for starters and then do everything else. Sorry, I did a little bit of a mistake here. Uh, it's time to zoom into this sculpt, and I would lower this draw size quite some, and let's check out what works. This seems quite convincing, but I would do maybe a little less. Let's see. Sometimes it gets stuck like that. I would do maybe 20. Let's see that. Yeah, 20 seems quite fine. And then I'm just gonna go around and bevel all of these edges. It's just simple work, just go all over it and bevel everything there is. So now that we have kind of beveled the edges, I want to just go over a little bit why I actually did it. And it just gives us a little bit of that stylized look right off the bat. And sometimes this can actually be it, honestly, for sculpting. But since this is more of a hero prop, I really need to do a lot more for it. And what I like to do is actually use plenty of brushes and plenty of trim smooth border to achieve a lot of various damages on it. And since it is supposed to be a rundown, that's what we're gonna do in here. So basically, what I like doing here is just zooming in a little and grab a trim smooth border brush. And now you can add damages like this. Also, very important note: get the alpha 28, the square alpha. It gives a better detail overall. And I could go off and create detail like this, and it could work quite well. I mean, this could look pretty good. And even when I just kind of polish it up a little bit and whatnot, this could look really good. Actually, I'm gonna keep that one because it looks kind of way good. But what I like doing is doing the orientation, selected orientation here, and you can find that I believe in the stencil here, or picker, yeah, picker and then orientation. And I just choose straight up, straight at the camera, and then choose a nice angle in here, and just sort of do a little bit of damages here. Just go back and forth. In here, you see how we're creating multiple levels of detail in here, and that's what I'm actually aiming for. These kind of damages that took place, and then always I like to return to one sorry and just do a little bit more of it, because sometimes you create this really hard edge, and that's not really the desired look. We're creating a damage, not something like that. So just going over it a little more can help quite a bit. And now that you have your base orientation, you can take in the normal from here, since it's set on one sorry. You can take it in and just get it all the way down, like so. You see how we're creating that minuscule amounts of detail? We can also add a little bit, just play around with this. It's all quite fun actually. And I'm gonna polish these up later. I know these are not like good enough to be shipped as they are, but I will do that a bit later when I polish everything. So I would go on and do a few more of these. So again, same thing. You can even do a little bit like offset, but I like doing it a little bit like this. And just select an angle that you think will suit it, and then just get at it. Get at the sculpting of it, and just create these levels and layers. That's what this tool really is all about. And you can see how it looks from a bit further away. Pretty cool. And since we have a lot of polys, it's looking amazing as well. But always go back and do a little bit more here, because you see these really hard edges. I learned this from bad experience, that when you actually do this and you leave these hard edges, these can be they can look quite wonky and bad. So uh, remember, it's a 3D object. So just go over it a little bit, break it up. You can even do the same with the selected orientation here, but I like it the way it is right now. So just a little bit breaking up, and that's it. And we are gonna do the same on the other side. One important note here is that when you see these little small bumps, let me just zoom in, these kind of defects of geometry, uh, try to spot them early on, because they can be quite a hassle to get rid of. I'm just gonna smooth them in this case, and then just a little bit of trim smooth border. Um, because they can actually ruin quite a lot of stuff, and it's really hard to get rid of them once they become a big problem. Okay, so we have quite some nice damages. Next up, I'm going to work on some scratches and whatnot. And for this, I can use clip curve, and let me show you how. So just find the clip curve. It should be under the clip section. Here it is, clip curve. And you do the control and shift to control it. And wherever it's this, as you can see, this black gradient is, that's where it's gonna cut. So let me show you. See how it cuts. So we can use this sort of to our advantage to do little cuts like these, um, or even bigger cuts. We can try out many things. They look quite nice, like so. You can get some quite nice results with them. They're pretty basic, but once you do a little bit of sculpting with them, so let's say you like this one, you just you sculpt it a little bit, and you can get quite some nice details in here. As you can see, it looks way better than it did. We can even do some trim dynamic stuff to kind of smoothen it a little bit, make it a pastel look. And yeah, in no time we created quite something interesting, but I'm not gonna do that here because I think there is a better way of doing it, and that is using brushes. And I'm using usually orb brushes, orb cracks, and all the other orb brushes, and Loo cracks, and I'm gonna link them both down below. They should be both free, I believe. The orb brushes are definitely free. Let's see. I'm not sure if these Loo ones are, but I'm gonna link them down below. They're amazing, all of them. So what I usually do is go to um, morph target and store morph target. So we want to grab, like, let's say this one. This one is laggy for some reason, but let's see. And just drag it out. And watch out for the back face, because this can, yeah, this can really mess up your model. So let's undo that. And what we'll do is click on back face mask. And I believe that you can find that in brush, and then go to auto masking and back face mask. Yeah, there it is. So you can go and do that and just grab, you can make it as big as you want. It won't affect the backside of your model, and that's what we want. Of course, we don't want this big thing. Um, so what morph target does is it basically stores the current value of the model or the mesh, whatever you want to call it. And now I have this, but let's say I don't want certain part of this. So let's say I don't want this part here, this kind of edge. Then what I can do is actually use the morph brush to morph this back into what it was, as you can see. A pretty handy tool for doing stuff like this. You can also make them varied. I like doing that. Just kind of going around, make some a bit thinner cracks and whatnot. Just make some nice places for it, as you can see. But my favorite for doing this is just using the trim smooth. And let's lower this draw size some. And just kind of going in and giving that nice sharper look on it. Here and there. And we can actually, I'm gonna get it back to a bit higher. And we can just do a little bit of it. See, this is a kind of a pinch point here. And what I would do here is probably trim dynamic to just smoothen this area out a little. And we can also use trim dynamic for these. So how I think of things, it's usually trim smooth border to generate and create cool looking shapes. And it's trim dynamic for getting this nice pastel look or like a stylized feel to it. Of course, it can feel stylized even with trim smooth only, but this is how I like to do things. So just going around, doing some changes to the mesh. And what we can do in here as well is I'm liking this pretty much. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of this here. And here is another bad point. So you have to fix these because they can show up in the bake and they can be quite ugly. But one thing here, you can see it looks a bit better. It looks like jagged a bit and whatnot. What we can do is actually grab like orb cracks brush and we can add to these cracks. And how we add to these cracks is just get them in like this. And now these look pretty basic, but if you vary the pen pressure, they're really, really cool. So if you like go really slowly and then just get the pen pressure up and then just vary it a little bit, you can get some quite cool results, as you can see. And I like this quite a lot. And then just do the same thing you would do with the brush that you did. So I would just lower this just a tad and go in, create a little bit of shape here and there, and just get the trim dynamic afterwards, and then just smooth it out, make it look real nice. You can also use trim dynamic with the square alpha, but I found it that this is a bit better for this situation. Also, always experiment. It could be way different for what you are doing. So let's check it out how it looks. Pretty decent. One problem I'm having with this though is that they don't seem like they're connecting. So I'm gonna grab a orb cracks again and just lightly try to connect these so they feel connected. Yeah, just with very light pen pressure, or if you don't have a pen, just very low intensity. That was the main problem here for me. Just very lightly connect them up, and that should give us quite a different feel. Yeah, already. Now I've noticed a little bit of a thing here that I don't quite like. Don't know what it is, but I'm just gonna get rid of it. Let me zoom in a bit more. Yeah, this thing. I can just trim dynamic this, I think. Okay. Pretty good looking for now, if you ask me. We can also continue these and maybe connect them up to something else later on, we'll see. But I'll just go around and do this for the rest of the mesh. One important thing here is when you're doing these kind of brushes, you don't want to have this sudden cutoff here. So what I like doing is just with trim smooth border, just get the normal of it and just try and get it over to the other face, to the other side of the model. Especially when it's like a big cut in here. Try and get it over so it feels a bit more natural. It feels like it actually belongs there. And also using the orb cracks, you can just kind of make them feel even better. And you can continue this in here, the little kind of scratch, indent, whatever you want to call it. You can continue it on the other side, and it's pretty handy. because you get to have the model feel coherent and it's actually like one big piece. It's not just, oh, there's a lot of detail on this side, but on the other side it's just nothing. And then, of course, just the usual kind of polishing, getting the trim dynamic out, just doing a little bit of these tiny details. And you can also just uh, get it like done real fast. And orb cracks always like use it for some small little things and details in there. So let's say here it kind of looks good, but not as good as I want it to be. Orb cracks just slowly make way for where the edge is. And also one big tip is just always look from afar, because if you never know how it might look when you're looking from afar, and that's sometimes the most important part actually. Not actually just how the details are, because once you zoom in, like everything can look kind of ugly, but when you're zoomed out, what looks good, what looks bad, and what do you actually need to fix up on. Like here, it's quite apparent like that this looks pretty decent, but if you zoom in, you can get really lost in the detail. So zoom out as often as you can. Now that we have done these little scratches and whatnot, I have noticed that these kind of inner parts feel a little bit too smooth right now. And I don't really like that, because this is also like part of the mesh. And I want them to be all damaged or like rough and cranky and whatnot. And what I will actually first do is get like roughly a brush size of that, and I'm just gonna grab Orb Flatten Edge, and that's like one of my favorite brushes, and just go over it slowly with Orb Flatten Edge. This will give it a bit more stylized look rather than smoothed out. And let's just get it. Yeah, as you can see, it's kind of giving us that feel of stylized. Here, it's a bit of a mess though, because if you try and do it, you will encounter quite a bit problems doing it. As you can see, some weird artifact thingies and whatnot. And what I do is just kind of combination of adding and subtracting. Just kind of a little bit of alt in there and it should fix it up. So this is like a good start, but I want to add some of those edges and scratches onto these sides as well, and then maybe even connect them up to these ones with like orb cracks and then a little bit more work. And that's what I'm actually gonna go do now. And it's yeah, that's I think the last part before we do the polishing. So now we're gonna move on to the polishing part. And for polishing, it's really quite simple. We use a combination of brushes here. It's just a little bit of trim dynamic, a little bit of H polish, and then zoom in, zoom out, always see what you're actually doing. So we're just wanting to get some of these very roughy edges and whatnot, just kind of smoothened out a little bit. Um, Some of the detail is fine, some of it is a bit too much. And just remember, keep zooming out to see how all of that feels and looks. And Edge Polish is also a great tool here for creating a bit less noisy planes. As you can see, pretty good. And we'll just go over the most important places, especially the damages we did in the beginning. So now I don't really like this kind of feel here, so I'm just gonna do that. And always just keep going back and forth between brushes. You can use trim smooth, you can use trim dynamic, edge polish, flatten, move things around even maybe. But it's just a matter of what looks nice to you at this point, and just a bit of polishing up the complete model, because it's all in the detail, and the little detail really does add up after a while, especially when you polish it up. And just make it look nice, coherent, like it's actually been worked on. And we can do the same for some of these edges and some of these cracks and whatnot. We'll just keep on polishing until it feels nice. Now, this is a site I'm pretty happy with, and honestly, the only thing left to do is smooth out some of these with H polish. Not like that, very very lightly. Just some of these weird places where it shows up where the low poly was. We don't want any of that. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how all this turned out. It's very nice looking. It has a lot of detail. The only thing I would add here, and just a little bit of it, is I would use not the noise one. The noise one is a bit too much. I would use an orb rock detail, as you can see, just to add a little bit more to the whole picture. Now I can see a lot of little problems here, so let's just get them sorted. But this just adds a little bit more to the normal map when we eventually bake this. And even though it's quite subtle, it's gonna look quite amazing. Also, just please remember backface mask. It's quite important for this part. We don't want any leakage, so to say, over to other places. And like with everything, you can pull this texture and work on it a little bit. So refine it just a little bit, just use trim smooth, just do a little bit of that, just kind of change it a bit, then use trim dynamic to smooth things out. And that way you can have your own kind of noise pattern and it doesn't get repetitive sort of. So just do a little bit of it just so it doesn't get repetitive. I'll just go over the whole mesh with it and that's it. Also, just be careful. We are talking here about detail, so be subtle, but also not too subtle, because if you're too subtle with your detail, a lot of it will not even bake into the normal map when you bake it to low poly. So just be cautious not to overdo it, and be cautious not to underdo it. Also, you can see some problems here, but you can almost always smooth them out and just fix them up. As you can see, some problems can emerge while doing this, and you can see them when you zoom in. Now, this most of the time won't even probably show on the bake, and it's pretty small, but we can go and fix it. I would just like to re-dynamesh this. Uh, Wait, let's just Oh, I messed it up. Let's delete the lower and do a Dynamesh on maybe 2000 even. Let's see what's close to this. Yeah, 2000 should be fine. And also one thing I don't like, lower the blur value. So maybe 0.1, or it can be 1 or okay. Dynamesh it. Just lower the blur value so it doesn't blur a lot of the detail we have made. And that looks just fine. Yep, that's pretty good. Oh, we just kind of messed it up on this part, did we? 300. Let's do blur 1 and then Dynamesh it. Yeah, it has a bit more polys now, but it's pretty good. I like how this ended up. So I'm just gonna save my tool here and we'll go into retopology or decimation, shall I say. Okay, now that the tool is saved, I want, since this is my really main, like a hero asset of the scene that I'm creating, uh, I don't want to use just the low poly that I created for this original mesh. I actually want to decimate this one so I get a lot of this juicy detail on it. And I'm gonna go for something like in the 6 to 10k range of faces. So that would be someone maybe 5 to 6k vertices. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna aim for that. So how you decimate a mesh is you go to Z plugin and then you find the decimation master here and then pre-process current. So once I have this processed, we can go back to Z plugin and decimation master, and now we can choose the percentage of this. How much do we want? So let's start with 0.1 and decimate current. So that's 2k vertices. I want a little bit more, so let's do like 0.3 and just decimate current. 7k. I think I'm gonna go with this. It looks pretty good. In some cases, this could even like be like a complete thing, but I just use this as a low poly. Actually, I'm gonna do 0.2, just a little smaller. Yeah, this should do just fine. And I'm gonna export this as FBX, and I'm gonna unwrap it all in Blender. But before that, if you're doing the same kind of pillars as I am, you can always go and do the same processes that I'm gonna do on the second subtool, this one. It's the exact same process we're doing. The absolutely exact same, just do a little bit of damage. This one should take quite a bit less of your time to do because it's just smaller, way smaller. And just do the same processes, do the same edge damages as I have done before, and just once you're done with it, export it all out into Blender and we can get going to the next part. So now we're in Blender and I have imported all the meshes I've made, even the little one. And let's just now name them properly and see which is which. This seems like high poly, so I'm just gonna say 01 high, and then this should be the low poly. I mean, as low as it gets. I'm gonna turn on the statistics here to see, and it's almost 10k polys, and that is quite fine with me because this is, again, this is like the main thing. The main hero prop I'm making, so I'm completely fine with it having quite a bit more low polys, quite a bit more polys, sorry. And I'm gonna move them ahead, both of them actually, into the pillar 1 scene collection. And if you don't know how to do it, you just select and press M, and then you can move them to a collection. Way more simple. Another thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move this a little bit like this, and just kind of get them centered somewhere like this. Yeah. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select one by one. I'm gonna say origin to 3D cursor, and it should set its origin there. And then the same thing here, origin to 3D cursor, and there we go. And now we can move them a little bit out of the way. And I'm gonna hide the high poly because we're not gonna need it mainly. Now this should be the low poly, yeah. So this is the pillar O2 low, and this should be pillar O2 high. And I'm gonna do the same thing I did to them to the first pillar. Just move it in place where I want the origin to be, and then the same thing, set origin and set origin to 3D cursor, and then just move them both out of the way a little bit. And again, select both of them, move them to another collection, and I'm just gonna hide the high poly. Now, how I go about actually creating the UV maps is I usually, let me just turn off this normal showcase. I usually just do it very simple. And this is a pretty simple one, let's be real. It's just, we need like this side of the face. And this is gonna be one island as well. This is gonna be one island. This is gonna be one island. And this one will be two separate islands as well. So it's pretty simple how you do it, and how I like to do it is usually just define what these starting islands are. So something like this in here, just define them, and then go about your daily jobs. And I use quick favorites here. It's a queue, and I can mark seam. And how you do that actually is you can go to UV probably. Yeah, here mark seam. And how I do it is right click and you will see add to quick favorites button here. And when you press up Q, it just brings up all the little things that you have put up here. And I have mark seam and clear seam because it speeds up my workflow quite significantly actually. So let's do the same for the bottom one. And I'll just select what I deem to be a nice edge and just select everything properly, and by using control click you select way faster. You don't need to select everything by itself. And then again mark seam. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go alongside these edges and just pull them together into a nice unwrapped, so to say, model. And I'm gonna do the same for this one as well. So now that we have both of them selected and we have all the seams needed, I'm gonna unwrap them. And I have an add-on for this. It's called ZenUV. I just use it to simplify my process. But this is like pretty straightforward. You just unwrap the mesh and that's it. It comes packed like so. And to save texture space, to actually save on optimization, I am packing them all into one texture set, but I'm gonna later on be exporting them separately, and in Unreal they will be using the same material, even though they're separate objects. So another thing I will do, and you don't have to do this, but you can do this manually of course, I have a UV Packer add-on. I'm gonna link all of these little add-ons in the description so you know which ones I'm using and what workflows I'm using. But I have this packing add-on, and you can. This is a paid version, but you can get a UV packer for free that just helps you pack everything way faster and way better. So I'm gonna pack these textures real quick, and then export these out into FBX format, and then we will go on to texture them in Substance Painter. So we have set up all the UVs right here with a little bit of manual selection and whatnot. I'm probably gonna change the UV map going forward because in part 2 of this kind of mini series I'm gonna create the destructed parts as well, like the ones with missing caps and whatnot. And I'm probably gonna pack them all into this one UV map. We'll see about that, maybe not. But for now, this will do quite well, and it has around 53, almost 54% of coverage. I'm pretty fine with that. I'm pretty okay with it. Actually, I found a little error here, and I want to see what it is. Oh, it's here. Is it only here? Yeah, it's only here, okay. So let's check this out. Oh, okay, this is completely normal to happen sometimes. And this happens due to the decimator in Zbrush being a little broken. And what we do is we usually just go ahead and dissolve these vertices. These two we can delete because they're not really connected to anything. This happens and it's a normal thing, so don't get scared. It's usually a really easy fix with just dissolving vertices here until we get something that looks normal. So let's just keep on dissolving them here, and when they're not connected, just delete them completely. We can even delete some of these. No, I want, yeah, delete these, dissolve these. And the reason I'm doing dissolve is because that doesn't affect the mesh that much. So I actually just dissolve the vertex instead of deleting it. Then it will create some extra problems. So here we can actually use a knife tool to fix this up a little. This whole section is a bit messed up. So what we can do in here, just dissolve all this. Dissolve them all. So this is a good example, and I'm glad that this sort of error popped up. Just use your knife tool to maneuver around these areas. We can't have n-gons in here. That's a really bad thing for our mesh. I think I can dissolve this, and that should be fine now. And when we go into the UV map, there shouldn't be, yeah, there's, now it's pretty okay. And what I will do for for a finishing touch is get a low poly, and I'm gonna get a shrink wrap. I mean, this is not really that necessary, but just to improve the bake by like 5% or something. And just in here, select the pillar high, and it will try to wrap itself. I like to go on the inside there. And it's pretty like, it doesn't do much. Let me show you. So this is, when I enable this, it shows how much they actually moved, and I think it's pretty minuscule. Yeah, you can barely see it, but just in case, it's always nice to do it and to have it. So basically, it just tries to wrap itself around the object to the nearest high poly vertex, and we're gonna do this for both of them. So shrink wrap, and the target is high poly. There's some problems here. We can solve this. Let's dissolve these edges. This is just a bit of a shading problem. It's okay. This probably won't even show up when we bake it down. But let's just be sure what we're doing here. Oh, this one as well. Yeah, this is a bit of a problematic one, as you can see. We can dissolve it and then just make some triangles. That's good. You will usually find a lot of these. You can scour the mesh, but they usually present themselves like these little errors. Like for example here, they usually present themselves quite well. In this case, I think you can even dissolve this. I'm just gonna create a little triangle here. Because they're pretty apparent most of the time. They show pretty ugly on the mesh itself. And I'm gonna apply this now. So Just you can go around the mesh a little bit and see if anything needs fixing. If it does, just fix it real quick and you'll be ready to go. It's nothing to panic about. Just dissolve a few vertices. Just get a knife tool out and just be wary of n-gons because that's the thing we don't really want to. Now, how I'm gonna bake these is since I'm gonna export these separately. I don't want to combine the texture maps later. I want them to have one texture set and I don't want the hassle of combining texture sets. So what I do usually is I grab both of them and I do file export and I export them as FBX and I'm gonna export them as baking underscore low. So this is just for bake basically. And I export it out and now I'm gonna hide both of them and I'm gonna grab the high polys and I'm gonna get these and these are going to be baking high. And now if I they will bake completely okay. They will bake perfectly. The only real difference will be that it's just gonna combine the texture set immediately. Oh, this is a bit of a problem, but let's see if it shows up. It's quite small actually. If it shows up, we'll just fix that right up. In the high poly, it's no big deal. It's just a bit of smoothing and whatnot. But the main thing here is we will export these separately later. And how I do it, I have this free add-on for Unreal Engine. And you basically set to export recursive. And you can one-click export both of them. And they're now separate objects. And when I import them in Unreal, they will be separate, but they will use the same material, and that way I optimize things a bit better. So we're pretty much done here in Blender. So let's get on to actual texturing now. Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention real quick is these two need to have same materials, and Zbrush usually assigns them. And since these two are different ones, they will not do the baking thing I just mentioned. So we need to just, I'm gonna call this one baking, and this is for pillar 1, and I'm gonna just copy I'm gonna link materials, Control L, and then go to link materials. And now they should both have baking, yeah. And now you should export them out properly this time, and now they should actually work completely fine. So now that we are in Substance Painter, let's just select our file here, and we named it baking underscore low. We don't need auto unwrap because we already unwrapped the whole thing. And here are our meshes. And as you can see, only one texture set. And that's what we're looking for here. We will go down to the Bake Mesh Maps section. And in here, I'm going to choose 4K. I'm going to go to the high poly. I'm going to disable the clown map or ID map. Every other map we will need. And I'll just adjust this frontal distance so we can get a bit more crispier bake, maybe a little bit more rear distance. And now, if your computer can handle it, go under anti-aliasing and go super sampling 64. Mine will probably burn before he actually renders the textures, and this takes a longer time. But what it does actually is just it renders the texture at a super high resolution, and then it downscales to your output size, which in this case is 4K. So we're just gonna bake 4K textures here, and everything besides ID map basically. So we have our basic bake now, and this is usually the time where you check for errors on your mesh. And how I like to do it, I usually go to the layer here. Actually, not that one. I usually add a fill layer. And with a fill layer, we can boost the roughness up and see what's the problem. So usually I look into these crevices if any information is lost, if any is a bit distorted, warped, or whatever may be the case. But to me, it looks perfectly normal. Now, I did go back to my high poly to fix some of the weirdness going on this side off screen. But aside from that, I think this is all a very nice mesh. So let's head on to the texturing and how I approach it, what do I do, why do I do that, and much more. So with stylized texturing, a lot is important, but most important are probably roughness map, edges, a bit of AO, and a bit of that stylized look, like the Ghibli or sort of like blurred uh, brush strokes that you get from the stylized works. So first things first, we're going to develop a base color, and I'm going to choose something a bit darker here, actually a bit lighter, because I know how Unreal will make these a bit darker than they are. And I'm going to desaturate it a bit more, and this will be our base sort of, and I'll set this to 0.8 on the roughness, and this will be our base color, and we will reference this one every time we go back. First things first, I like to get like a good edges flowing right away. So I'm gonna add a folder and say edges, and then I'm gonna add a folder. I'm gonna add a fill layer and say edges 01, let's say. And the best way I like doing edges is I go and add a bitmap mask, and that mask will be thickness here. If I go and select this mask, Alt and left click, by the way, on the mask to see what's going on, you can see it's pretty cool, but we don't really have that edge, like that edge info that we're looking for. And we're going to invert the mask real quick, and now it looks more like it. And I always fiddle around with these levels, and so should you. It's pretty simple, just get around, see what works, what doesn't, and we can go ahead to see this. And I'm gonna choose something really white. So with and without, this is still quite strong. We can maybe boost these black values a little bit. Let's see. That looks quite better. Yep. And these are kind of the highlight edges. The next type of edges, if you want to duplicate, you just click Ctrl D. The next type of edges, we will do a curvature, and those are pretty harsh. So I go add a generator and go for curvature here. And as you can see, a lot is going on here. What I like doing, just set the balance somewhere where you like it. I also like adding levels to this, even though this is sort of the levels as well, but you have a bit more control when you add levels. So let me show you. I can maybe do this or something like so, and always look at it how it looks up here. Pretty good, honestly, pretty good. I am liking this. Yeah. The only thing would be, yeah, this is a bit of a problem here, this one, but honestly, it'll pass this time. So this is pretty good. I would just make them both a little more subtle. We can always come back to this, of course. The next thing I like doing is AO, and I'm gonna make a folder for AO and details, and this will come later, of course, but now we're just gonna do the AO. And AO is the simplest thing there can be. Just add a black mask and add a generator, and we just add ambient occlusion in there. And what we want, I think I'm gonna go for some kind of greenish color for the ambient occlusion. And let's see. Ambient occlusion. We're gonna invert this because we want these little indents, crevices, and whatnot. Just play around with this. You don't have to do too much. It's just for these little crevices. And be careful, because if you upscale it, the ambient occlusion actually reacts with these two. That's the only downside using this method, but I even think this is still better. We could have also baked by mesh name in this scenario, but honestly, too much of a hassle for a simple thing that we can easily avoid. So I like doing something like this. And let's check it out. Yep, that's amazing. I want a little bit darker color though. Like, let's see, maybe desaturate it a bit. Yeah, this feels quite nice. Yep. And I'm gonna leave it at that for now. Maybe a bit more a bit more saturation in the color. Let's see. Maybe a bit more towards the yellow side of things. That can also seem to work nicely. Also, this is just playing around. This is also very up to you what you want to do. I'm just showing you the principles behind actually texturing this so you can apply them yourself and make something of your own. So this is pretty good. I now want paint layers. And these are arguably the most important ones. And I like to go and copy my base color. And this is here. And just ditch it in here. So what we do in here is, let's say, paint layer. Doesn't matter. We go and add a black mask here. And after we add a black mask, we add a fill. And now this fill can be many things, and I'll show you two ways of doing things. I'm gonna kinda mishmash them together, how I do it. So basically, I go for a cells texture, cells 4 to be precise. And let's see, in this case, I don't think triplanar projection will be needed. I think we can go with normal one. I think, yeah, I think this is pretty okay. So let's just, for starters, set this to be a bit darker, just to see what we're actually doing. This might stay this way, might not, who knows. But what we're doing here is we're taking this and we're gonna first enlarge it a bit. So scale, let's put that somewhere smaller, something like this should do. And now we can overlay a lot of these and make it still look nice, but that it's not like it's not giving that brush stroke feel, right? And what gives it that is when we add a filter, and this is like the bread and butter of stylized texturing, some can say. But we can add a blur slope in here. And blur slope basically makes that kind of painterly, as you can see it. And we can just mess around with all these settings, with the intensity and the quality, to get the desired result. And now we can also go in here and we can say balance. We can set it to lower, so we have lower amount of these splotches. And now what I like doing is just setting the whole layer a bit darker, as you can see. And I'm gonna duplicate this, and I'm gonna go to cells and just do a random button here. So we have a different mask, as you can see. And I would like to change the color a bit. Let's see, what can we do in here? We can add like these more white splotches, and maybe, yeah, something like that should work quite nicely. And it's pretty minimalistic as well. I'm really liking it so far. Now another thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna copy this one again. And now instead of cells, we're actually going to be using a grunge map. And now with grunge maps, well, you choose which one you like. But there are a few that probably do the best. And what you're looking for is these kind of splotches again. And let me show you. See how they actually, so if I disable blur slope, these are some nice splotches that will give some decent amount of values here. And we can of course play with the blur slope again, intensity, maybe not so intense, maybe more intense. We can just play around with these, get that painterly effect. You can also search grunges in here, I believe. Yeah. And we can go ahead and find some cool ones. This one is really good, yeah. This is the grunge map 04. It has really good, like it has these splotches, and that's what we're kind of after. We can just mess around with the balance and contrast of things. Blur slope. I'm not really liking how this is going. So I'm gonna do this and maybe just lower the intensity a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty good. And now we can go check it out. And you can see it's adding levels to what we're making right now. And it's pretty good. Honestly, I'm liking this one. Maybe make it a bit darker, just a tad. And yeah, this is looking quite nice. We can look from the other side as well. And I'm liking this. I'm liking this quite a lot. We can duplicate this again. And we can do the same, just randomize. But we can do multiple stuff in here. We can add a different grunge map this time around. And I think I used this one. Let's see. I think I used this one. So let's try out this one. This grunge, what's it called? Grunge stain spot. So this gives that nice feeling. And we can maybe change the coloring a little bit. We can maybe even do this. This is something you can do with this type of painting. So let's see where they're showing up first. Yep, pretty good. And this is something you can do with this. It's like really subtle. And we can maybe increase the balance here. Yeah, that's a good one. And we can do like these yellowish stains, but we just make them really subtle. And that way we're adding a bit more color variation, but it's just really subtle, but it's nice on the eyes anyways. One thing I like doing as a finisher for this is I copy and have a dirt layer. And this dirt layer is usually a big grunge map that covers the whole mesh. And let's find something that can potentially look nice. We can, what we can do here. This seems like an interesting one. Yeah, let's do this one. Let's go here into the grunge, and this looks like a nice one. Yeah, this one. And now I do like a brownish color, and this will encompass the whole thing. But this is of course to be done very very subtle, very subtle. And I also, if I have control over the balance, which I should, do like this. Yeah, this is pretty good. And we can increase to see what we've done, and then just well, one is pretty much invisible, but set this to like 30, 35 maybe. Yep, you can see them here and there. Let's do 25. I want that a bit more subtle and maybe a bit brighter. Yeah, brightness gives it Gives it a nice look. And let's do 15 even maybe. And let's fiddle around with this. This should be nice. Yeah, I'm liking the look of this. And I'm probably gonna keep it as is. This looks like really, really good. I like both of these pillars. And what could we do next? This is like a pretty good thing we have done already. It's a pretty good texture. And I don't know what we can do besides this. Yeah, there's actually one more thing. If you go to your roughness and you can shuffle it by pressing C, you can see that, well, it's not really good. How you fix this is by going into these layers, each and every one, and just vary this. Do a little bit lower values, do a little bit mid-range values, just vary them a bit randomly. And of course, with some sense, like dirt, of course, it should be a bit rougher. Should be a bit less rough, so to say. And that's a nice, like, nice roughness map already. But on the edges, we have a little problem. We can do these completely white, and I think I'm gonna keep that. And this thing, this roughness inside the crevices, we can keep them completely rough, or next to completely rough. And another thing is add a fill layer, drop it in here, and this is only a roughness layer, like only a roughness layer. And what we do is we add a black mask, and then we add a grunge, so add a fill. What we're gonna do here, just disable everything besides the roughness. Roughness is the most important thing, and I'm gonna just yoink it completely up. And this fill layer should be some kind of grunge map. And I know I used a really good one once. If I can find it again, it would be amazing. So let's just scour through these. Of course, you can use whichever one you feel like it. It's just, it's a completely normal thing. We're just doing this to add some sort of variation, because roughness map is one of the most important ones. We can try this one out. Oh yeah, this is pretty good. And for this, we can actually try planar projection. So we have a bit more interesting one. And now if we go to the material, I can show you, if you go to the side, let's see the roughness. Oh yeah, so this, let's see how we can make it. Yeah, we can either make it really rough, which I'm not a fan of. I like making it a little bit under 0.5, like 0.4 maybe. And then when you go to the material, you can sort of see how light bounces nicely off of those extra few grunge layers. So extra roughness layer. And that will create, I'm gonna now go a bit too much so you can see it. You can see those little refractions there. Yeah, see those? Those all the way there. Yeah, those are amazing. I'm gonna even go 3.5 maybe. And let's check out our roughness map. Amazing. Looks really, really good. So honestly, this is where I would call it done. This is like pretty good. What I do is just go File, Export Textures, and you export them as Unreal SSPect, and just find your folder where you want to export them. To me, it's this one, and just hit on Export, and then we will set up a really fast material in Unreal Engine, and after that, it's just very simple process of just checking out and having fun with it, pretty much. So now that we are in Unreal and this little scene of mine, we can actually start to just import all of this real quick. And I'm gonna import the texture maps first. And then I'm gonna go to the meshes tab. And as you can see, I already have tested out some stuff with these pillars, but these are actually gonna be the ones that I'm gonna be using. So let's just import. These are probably gonna re-import because they have same names, but it should be all right here. Let's see. Okay, one imported, one didn't, so that's okay. We're just gonna open these both up, both of these models, and we're just gonna assign them this little material here. I'm gonna probably do a separate tutorial on the material later on. It's really nothing special, you just connect up everything in a nice way. We just want, where did this one go? We want this one to have the same material, and I'm gonna open up the material in here, and I'm just gonna drag out normal map, base color, and this should be warm. Yeah, there it is. So we have a nice little setup here. The thing is, these are not the pillars. These are the old ones. So we should go about switching them out. Actually, I know. I'm just gonna switch them in this direction. Yeah, this is gonna require quite a lot of fidgeting. So I'm gonna go to the side here. And I'm gonna just showcase you all the little ones. And you can see it looks pretty good. I don't see any problems with it whatsoever. It has a nice roughness map, it has a nice look to it, nice feel, and honestly, this one was a big success. Uh, so let's see. We can always tweak these values a little bit, like the AO, for example. We don't really have to. I don't like tweaking this that much. I like the AO to be kind of normalish, and then we can tweak the specular, of course, if we want this a bit darker, or if we want it somewhere in the middle. Also the roughness values, we can make it quite reflective or not. Depends on what we're looking for now. Yeah, but basically that was all there is to it. I hope you like this kind of long format tutorials. If you have anything you want to know more about or you want me to make more videos about, just feel free to let it down in the comments. I can make tutorials for basically everything I know. But that's it for now. Have an amazing day. Bye.